The Invisible Mind Traps. Break free from the hidden thoughts that control your life. Written and published by Fearless Audiobook. Introduction. Most people believe they are in control of their lives. They wake up, make plans, chase goals, and tell themselves they are choosing freely. But behind many of those choices is a quieter force, an unseen network of fears, beliefs, habits, and mental shortcuts that shape the way they think long before they realize it. These invisible mind traps do not announce themselves. They hide inside your assumptions, your excuses, your hesitation, your self-doubt, and even your confidence. They whisper that you are not ready yet, not smart enough, not strong enough, not deserving enough. And because their voice often sounds familiar, you mistake it for the truth. This audiobook is not just about negative thinking. It is about the hidden architecture of the mind, the patterns that make you repeat the same mistakes, delay the same dreams, and accept the same limits. Inside these chapters, you will uncover the traps that quietly control judgment, choice, emotion, and action. More importantly, you will learn how to see them, question them, and break their hold. Because freedom does not begin when life becomes easier. It begins when you finally recognize the thoughts that have been controlling you all along. Once you see them clearly, they lose their power, and the life you have been postponing begins to come into focus. Chapter 1. The Hidden Operating System of Your Mind. Every device you use has an operating system. You rarely see it, yet it controls almost everything. It decides how information is processed, how programs interact, and how the entire system responds to every command. Most of the time you never think about it because it quietly works in the background. Your mind operates in much the same way. Beneath every thought you consciously notice lies an invisible operating system made up of memories, beliefs, habits, emotions, and automatic mental patterns. It constantly interprets the world, predicts what will happen next, and influences how you respond. While you may believe you are making deliberate decisions, much of your daily behavior is guided by processes happening outside your awareness. This is not a flaw in the human mind. It is one of its greatest strengths. Imagine if every morning you had to consciously think about how to walk, brush your teeth, tie your shoes, or drive to work. Your brain would become overwhelmed before the day even began. To conserve energy, the mind automates repeated behaviors. It transforms actions into habits and decisions into routines. This allows you to navigate life efficiently, leaving your conscious attention available for new or complex situations. The problem begins when the mind automates not only useful behaviors, but also unhealthy ways of thinking. A child who is constantly criticized may unconsciously learn that making mistakes is dangerous. Years later, as an adult, that person may avoid challenges without realizing why. Another individual who experiences repeated rejection may begin assuming that people will always disappoint them. Over time, these conclusions stop feeling like opinions. They become unquestioned truths. The mind records experiences, searches for patterns, and creates shortcuts designed to protect you. Unfortunately, it cannot always distinguish between genuine danger and outdated beliefs. Something that helped you survive emotionally years ago may now be limiting your ability to grow. Think about the last time someone disagreed with you. Did you immediately become defensive? Did you carefully evaluate their perspective, or did your mind instantly search for reasons why they were wrong? That reaction probably happened before you consciously chose it. Your hidden operating system is constantly making predictions. It asks questions like, is this safe? Is this familiar? Have I experienced something like this before? Within fractions of a second, your brain prepares an emotional and behavioral response. Most of the time, you mistake that automatic response for your authentic self. This explains why people often say things like, "That's just who I am," or "I've always been this way." But have they? Or have they simply repeated the same mental program for so long that it feels permanent? The human brain is remarkably efficient. Scientists often describe it as a prediction machine. Rather than processing every situation from the beginning, it compares the present moment to stored experiences. If something resembles a previous event, your brain quickly fills in the missing information and suggests the most familiar response. This ability saves time, but it also creates blind spots. Suppose someone ignores your message for several hours. One person assumes they are simply busy, another immediately believes they are being rejected. The same event produces two completely different emotional experiences because each person's hidden operating system interprets it differently. Reality did not change. The interpretation did. This simple truth reveals something incredibly powerful. Many of your emotional reactions come not from events themselves, but from the meaning your mind automatically assigns to them. That is why two people can experience the same failure and respond in opposite ways. One sees it as evidence that they should give up. The other sees it as valuable feedback for improvement. The event is identical. The operating systems are different. Another characteristic of the hidden mind is its love for familiarity. Your brain does not naturally seek happiness or success first. It seeks predictability. Predictability feels safe. Even when your current situation is frustrating, your brain may resist change simply because the unknown feels more threatening than the familiar. This is why people often remain in unhealthy relationships, stay in unfulfilling careers, postpone meaningful dreams, or continue destructive habits long after recognizing they are unhappy. Their conscious mind wants change. Their hidden operating system wants certainty. Understanding this conflict explains why motivation alone rarely creates lasting transformation. Many people become inspired after reading a book, watching a motivational video, or attending a seminar. For a few days, they feel unstoppable. They make ambitious plans and promise themselves that this time will be different. Then, life returns to normal. The excitement fades. Old routines quietly return. Why? Because motivation speaks to the conscious mind, while habits live inside the unconscious operating system. Until the underlying mental patterns change, temporary inspiration struggles to overcome years of automatic programming. Fortunately, your operating system is not fixed. The brain possesses an extraordinary ability known as neuroplasticity, the capacity to build new neural pathways throughout life. Every time you challenge an automatic thought, practice a healthier habit, or choose a different response, you begin rewriting the invisible code that guides your behavior. This process does not happen overnight. Years of automatic thinking cannot be replaced in a single afternoon. But every conscious choice weakens an old pattern and strengthens a new one. That is why awareness is the foundation of every lasting transformation. You cannot change a pattern you cannot see. The greatest breakthrough does not come from forcing yourself to think positively. It comes from noticing the invisible programs that have quietly directed your thoughts for years. Once you recognize them, you create something you never had before, a choice. Instead of reacting automatically, you can pause. Instead of believing every thought, you can question it. Instead of repeating yesterday's patterns, you can create tomorrow's possibilities. Throughout this audiobook, you will uncover the hidden programs that influence your beliefs, emotions, decisions, and actions. Some of them have protected you, others have limited you. Learning to tell the difference is the beginning of genuine freedom. Because the moment you stop living on mental autopilot is the moment you truly begin living by choice. Chapter 2. Cognitive Biases. Why Your Brain Tricks You. Imagine standing in front of two mirrors. One reflects your image exactly as it is. The other subtly stretches, shrinks, and distorts your appearance. If you looked into the distorted mirror every day, eventually you would believe that the reflection was real. Your mind works in a surprisingly similar way. Most people assume they see the world objectively. They believe their opinions are based on facts, their decisions are logical, and their judgments are accurate. But the human brain is not designed to show reality exactly as it is. Instead, it filters, edits, simplifies, and interprets information through a collection of invisible shortcuts known as cognitive biases. These biases are not signs of low intelligence. In fact, every human being has them. Your brain processes an astonishing amount of information every second. If it analyzed every detail equally, even simple tasks would become exhausting. To save time and energy, the brain creates mental shortcuts. These shortcuts allow you to make quick decisions without carefully evaluating every piece of evidence. Most of the time, this system works remarkably well. But sometimes those shortcuts lead you in the wrong direction. Instead of helping you understand reality, they quietly reshape it. One of the most powerful cognitive biases is confirmation bias. Once you believe something, your brain naturally begins searching for evidence that supports that belief while ignoring information that challenges it. Suppose someone believes they are unlucky. They remember every disappointment, every missed opportunity, and every setback. Yet they quickly forget the moments when things worked in their favor. Over time, their belief becomes stronger. Not because it is true, because their mind keeps collecting evidence to support it. The same pattern appears everywhere. A person convinced that people cannot be trusted notices every betrayal but overlooks countless acts of kindness. Someone who believes they are incapable of success remembers every failure but dismisses every achievement as luck. The brain loves consistency more than accuracy. It would rather protect an existing belief than question it. Another common mental shortcut is the negativity bias. From an evolutionary perspective, this bias once helped humans survive. Our ancestors who noticed danger quickly were more likely to stay alive than those who focused only on pleasant experiences. Although the world has changed dramatically, the brain still gives more attention to negative events than positive ones. Think about receiving 10 compliments and 1 criticism. Which one stays in your mind the longest? For most people, it is the criticism. A single negative comment can erase the emotional impact of dozens of encouraging words. This is why failure often feels larger than success, why embarrassing moments replay endlessly in your mind, and why fear spreads more quickly than confidence. The brain isn't trying to make you unhappy. It is trying to keep you safe. Unfortunately, safety and happiness are not always the same thing. Another invisible trap is the availability bias. Your brain estimates how likely something is based on how easily examples come to mind. If news headlines repeatedly report airplane accidents, many people begin believing flying is extremely dangerous, even though statistically driving is often far riskier. The vividness of an event becomes more persuasive than the actual evidence. The same happens in everyday life. After hearing one story about a failed business, someone may conclude that entrepreneurship is too risky. After experiencing one painful rejection, another person may assume every future relationship will end the same way. One memorable experience begins representing an entire reality. Then there is anchoring bias. The first piece of information your brain receives often becomes the reference point for everything that follows. Imagine interviewing for a job. Before discussing your qualifications, someone casually remarks that the position is extremely competitive. Suddenly, you begin doubting your own abilities, even though nothing about your experience has changed. The initial idea quietly influences your confidence and expectations. This happens in negotiations, relationships, career decisions, and even the way people evaluate themselves. The first impression becomes an invisible anchor. Perhaps the most inspiring and also misleading bias is survivorship bias. People naturally focus on visible success while overlooking countless unseen failures. You hear about entrepreneurs who built billion-dollar companies after dropping out of school. You read stories of athletes who overcame impossible odds. You admire artists who achieved worldwide recognition after years of struggle. These stories are valuable, but they represent only the people who succeeded. Hidden behind every success story are thousands of others who followed similar paths without achieving the same outcome. When we ignore the full picture, we begin believing success is simpler than it truly is. Survivorship bias doesn't tell the whole story. It tells only the story that survived. Recognizing these biases is not about becoming suspicious of every thought. It is about becoming curious. Instead of immediately believing your first interpretation, ask yourself a different question. What evidence might I be missing? That single question can transform the quality of your thinking. Imagine two co-workers receiving identical feedback from their manager. One instantly thinks, "I'm failing." The other thinks, "This is an opportunity to improve." Neither conclusion comes directly from the feedback itself. Each conclusion is filtered through different cognitive biases, beliefs, and past experiences. The event remains the same. The interpretation changes, and because interpretation shapes emotion, emotion shapes action. This is why cognitive biases quietly influence every area of life. They affect who you trust. They affect how you invest your time and money. They affect your relationships. They influence your confidence. They shape your political opinions, your career choices, and even your expectations for the future. Without realizing it, people often spend years defending conclusions they never consciously examined. The good news is that awareness weakens the power of bias. You may never eliminate cognitive biases completely. They are part of being human, but you can prevent them from controlling your decisions. Whenever you encounter new information, pause before reacting. Seek evidence that challenges your assumptions. Listen carefully to perspectives different from your own. Accept the possibility that your first impression may not be your best one. The wisest people are not those who are always right. They are the ones willing to admit when they might be wrong. True intelligence is not measured by how much you know. It is measured by your willingness to question the invisible shortcuts that shape what you believe you know. Because the greatest deception is not being fooled by someone else. It is being quietly fooled by your own mind without ever realizing it. Chapter 3. The Prison of Limiting Beliefs. No prison is more powerful than the one whose walls cannot be seen. Unlike iron bars or locked doors, limiting beliefs exist entirely within the mind. They make no sound, leave no physical mark, and yet they quietly influence almost every decision you make. They determine whether you speak up or stay silent, whether you chase an opportunity or let it pass, whether you believe success is possible or convince yourself it belongs only to other people. The most dangerous part is that limiting beliefs rarely feel like beliefs. They feel like facts. A person may say, "I'm just not confident. I'm terrible with money. I'm not creative," or "people like me never succeed." These statements sound like objective descriptions of reality. In truth, they are often stories the mind has repeated for so long that they have become part of a person's identity. The human mind is a remarkable storyteller. From childhood, it collects experiences and searches for meaning. Every compliment, criticism, success, failure, rejection, and disappointment becomes another piece of evidence in the story you tell yourself about who you are. Over time, those stories harden into beliefs, and those beliefs begin directing your behavior. Consider a young child who eagerly raises their hand in class to answer a question. They make a mistake, and several classmates laugh. The teacher quickly moves on, but the child's mind does not. Instead of remembering only one embarrassing moment, the brain begins drawing a much larger conclusion. Speaking up is dangerous. If similar experiences happen again, the conclusion becomes stronger. I always embarrass myself. Years later, that child has become an adult who avoids presentations, stays quiet during meetings, and hesitates to share ideas. They may believe they simply have a shy personality, never realizing that a belief formed years ago is still quietly running the show. This is how limiting beliefs are born. They often begin as temporary conclusions about isolated events, but because the brain craves certainty and consistency, it turns those temporary conclusions into permanent identities. One failure becomes, "I am a failure." One rejection becomes, "Nobody wants me." One mistake becomes, "I'm not good enough." The event disappears, but the belief remains. Childhood is especially important because young minds absorb information without questioning it. Children naturally trust the adults around them. When parents, teachers, relatives, or peers repeatedly communicate certain messages, those messages often become part of the child's self-image. Sometimes these messages are direct. "You're lazy. You're too sensitive. You'll never be good at math. You should stop dreaming so big." Other times, they are communicated indirectly through comparison, neglect, unrealistic expectations, or lack of encouragement. Even well-meaning adults can unintentionally plant beliefs that continue influencing someone decades later. Of course, not every limiting belief begins in childhood. Some develop after painful experiences later in life. A failed business may convince someone they are not capable of becoming an entrepreneur. A broken relationship may lead another person to believe they are impossible to love. Losing a job might quietly become proof that they are not talented enough. The mind tries to protect you from future pain. If failure hurt once, avoiding future risks seems logical. If rejection felt unbearable, avoiding vulnerability appears safe. The brain believes it is helping you survive. But survival and growth are not always on the same path. One of the greatest problems with limiting beliefs is that they create self-fulfilling prophecies. Your beliefs influence your expectations shape your actions, and your actions eventually produce results that appear to confirm the original belief. Imagine someone who believes they are poor at public speaking. Before giving a presentation, they become anxious. They speak softly, avoid eye contact, rush through important points, and leave the stage convinced they performed badly. Their weak performance seems to prove they were right all along. But the belief caused the behavior. The behavior created the outcome. The outcome strengthened the belief. The cycle continues. Notice how quietly this happens. Very few people wake up and consciously decide to limit themselves. Instead, they unconsciously behave in ways that protect the identity they already believe to be true. This is why changing behavior without changing beliefs rarely lasts. You can force yourself to act confidently for a short time, but if you still believe you are inadequate, your mind will eventually pull you back toward familiar patterns. Lasting transformation begins beneath the surface, at the level of identity. Fortunately, beliefs are learned, and anything learned can be relearned. The first step is awareness. Ask yourself a simple but powerful question. What belief might be driving this decision? When you hesitate to apply for a promotion, what story are you telling yourself? When you postpone starting a business, what assumption are you protecting? When you avoid difficult conversations, what belief are you trying to avoid challenging? These questions reveal something remarkable. Many of the thoughts controlling your life were never carefully examined. They were simply accepted. The next step is to question the evidence. Suppose you believe you are not smart enough. Where did that belief come from? Was it formed because of one difficult exam, one critical teacher, one disappointing result? Is it based on hundreds of objective observations or just a handful of emotional memories that your mind continues replaying? Often, limiting beliefs collapse when exposed to honest examination. The brain tends to remember evidence that supports existing beliefs while ignoring evidence that contradicts them. You may have dozens of achievements, compliments, and moments of courage, yet your mind continues focusing on the few experiences that fit its old narrative. This is why writing down evidence against a limiting belief can be so powerful. Instead of asking, "Why can't I do this?" begin asking, "What proof do I already have that I can learn, improve, and adapt?" Another powerful shift happens when you replace identity-based language. Instead of saying, "I am not confident," try saying, "I am learning to become more confident." Instead of, "I'm terrible with money," say, "I'm developing better financial habits." Instead of defining yourself by your past, define yourself by your direction. Growth begins the moment identity becomes flexible. Remember, confidence is not an identity you are born with. Discipline is not a personality trait reserved for a lucky few. Success is not determined by labels assigned years ago. These qualities are built through repeated choices, consistent effort, and the willingness to challenge old assumptions. Every meaningful achievement in history began with someone refusing to accept the limits that others, or even their own mind, placed upon them. The prison of limiting beliefs has no locked doors. The walls are built from thoughts, reinforced by repetition and guarded by fear. But once you recognize that those walls were constructed by the mind, you also discover something extraordinary. Anything the mind has built, the mind can rebuild. And the moment you stop treating limiting beliefs as facts, they begin losing the power they once held over your life. Chapter 4: Fear in Disguise. Anxiety, doubt, and the illusion of safety. Fear has protected humanity for thousands of years. It warned our ancestors about dangerous predators, unstable terrain, and life-threatening situations. Without fear, our species might never have survived. But the modern world has changed much faster than the human brain. Today, the greatest threats most people face are not wild animals or natural disasters. Instead, they are job interviews, public speaking, difficult conversations, career changes, rejection, and uncertainty. Yet the brain often reacts to these situations as if survival itself is at stake. The result is a hidden mental trap. Fear disguises itself as wisdom, convincing us that staying where we are is the safest choice. This illusion of safety is one of the greatest barriers to personal growth. The mind has a natural preference for familiarity. It would rather stay in a situation it knows than enter one filled with uncertainty. Even when people are unhappy in their jobs, relationships, or daily routines, many remain there because the discomfort they already know feels less threatening than the uncertainty they don't. The familiar becomes comfortable even when it limits happiness and potential. The brain whispers, "At least you know what to expect." That quiet voice often sounds logical, but it is frequently fear wearing the mask of common sense. One of fear's favorite disguises is self-doubt. Before attempting something meaningful, many people hear an inner voice asking, "What if I'm not good enough?" They question their intelligence, talent, appearance, or ability long before reality has given them any reason to. These thoughts feel convincing because the brain is designed to search for possible dangers. Unfortunately, it often treats imagined failure as if it were a certainty. Instead of asking, "What if I succeed?" the mind repeatedly asks, "What if everything goes wrong?" This habit narrows possibilities and keeps people from discovering what they are truly capable of achieving. Perfectionism is another form of fear that often goes unnoticed. Many people proudly describe themselves as perfectionists, believing it is a sign of high standards. But beneath the surface, perfectionism is frequently driven by the fear of criticism, rejection, or failure. If something cannot be done perfectly, they delay starting altogether. They endlessly prepare, research, revise, and wait for the ideal moment that never arrives. In reality, perfection becomes a socially acceptable excuse for avoiding vulnerability. The fear is not making mistakes. The fear is being judged because of those mistakes. Imagine a young entrepreneur who dreams of starting a business. She spends months creating detailed plans, reading books, watching online courses, and designing the perfect strategy. Every time she feels ready to launch, she discovers another reason to wait. The logo could be better. The website needs improvement. The market isn't ideal. Deep down, the real obstacle isn't preparation. It is the fear that the business might fail. By postponing the launch, she protects herself from possible disappointment, but she also prevents herself from possible success. Fear often convinces us that avoiding risk protects us, when in reality it quietly steals opportunities we never even attempt. The comfort zone is another powerful illusion created by fear. Many people imagine it as a peaceful place where stress disappears. In truth, the comfort zone is simply a place where uncertainty is minimized. It may feel secure, but it rarely leads to growth. Skills improve only when they are challenged. Confidence grows only after facing uncomfortable situations. Muscles strengthen by resisting heavier weights. Minds become wiser by solving unfamiliar problems. Remaining comfortable may reduce temporary anxiety, but it also limits future possibilities. What feels safe today can become the greatest obstacle to tomorrow's success. Anxiety often amplifies this illusion by convincing us that uncertainty itself is dangerous. The anxious mind constantly searches for answers before taking action. It wants guarantees that everything will work out exactly as planned, but life has never offered absolute certainty. Every important decision involves some degree of risk. Waiting until all uncertainty disappears is like waiting for the ocean to become perfectly still before learning to sail. The conditions we are waiting for rarely arrive. Those who grow are not people who eliminate uncertainty. They are people who learn to move despite it. An important truth about courage is often misunderstood. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is choosing to act while fear is still present. Every person you admire has experienced moments of uncertainty. Successful leaders feel nervous before major decisions. Athletes experience pressure before competitions. Authors doubt their work before publishing. Entrepreneurs worry before launching new ideas. The difference is not that they are fearless. The difference is that they refuse to let fear make every decision for them. One helpful way to weaken fear is to question the stories your mind creates. When anxiety predicts disaster, ask yourself, what evidence supports this belief? More often than not, you will discover that your fears are based on possibilities rather than facts. The mind tends to overestimate danger while underestimating your ability to handle it. You have already overcome challenges that once seemed impossible. You have survived disappointments, adapted to change, and learned from mistakes. Your past proves that you are more resilient than fear wants you to believe. Another powerful strategy is to shift your focus from outcomes to actions. Fear constantly asks, "What if I fail?" A healthier question is, "What is the next small step I can take?" Instead of worrying about the entire journey, concentrate on the next conversation, the next application, the next workout, or the next page. Progress is built through small acts of courage, repeated consistently. Every action sends a message to your brain that the situation is survivable. Over time, what once felt terrifying becomes familiar, and confidence quietly replaces hesitation. Remember that every meaningful achievement in your life has likely required stepping into uncertainty. The first day at a new school, the first job interview, the first presentation, the first difficult conversation, or the first major decision all involved fear. Yet each experience expanded your world because you chose to move forward despite it. Fear promised that staying still would keep you safe. Experience proved that growth was waiting on the other side. The greatest danger is not feeling afraid. The greatest danger is allowing fear to quietly design your life without your awareness. Every time you let fear make your choices, your world becomes a little smaller. Every time you choose courage instead, your world becomes a little bigger. The goal is not to eliminate fear forever. The goal is to recognize its disguises, question its stories, and refuse to let it become the architect of your future. Because the life you are capable of living almost always begins just beyond the boundaries of what feels comfortable today. Chapter 5. The Endless Loop of Overthinking. Thinking is one of the greatest gifts of the human mind. It allows us to solve problems, imagine the future, learn from the past, and make thoughtful decisions. Every invention, masterpiece, and breakthrough began with someone who paused to think deeply. But like many strengths, thinking has a limit. When thinking turns into overthinking, it stops becoming a tool and starts becoming a trap. Overthinking is not simply thinking a lot. It is the habit of replaying the same thoughts without reaching a useful conclusion. It is the endless cycle of analyzing every possibility, questioning every decision, and imagining every worst-case scenario. Instead of bringing clarity, it creates confusion. Instead of leading to action, it leads to paralysis. The cruel irony is that overthinkers often believe they are being productive. After all, they are working hard. Their minds are constantly busy. They are considering every angle, every consequence, every possible mistake. It feels responsible. But being mentally busy is not the same as making progress. Imagine sitting in a rocking chair. You are moving continuously, using energy every second, yet you never leave the spot where you started. Overthinking works in much the same way. It creates the illusion of movement while keeping you exactly where you are. Why does the mind do this? The answer lies in one simple desire: certainty. The human brain dislikes uncertainty. It wants guarantees before taking action. It wants to know that every decision will succeed, every relationship will last, every investment will pay off, and every risk will end well. But life offers no such guarantees. Instead of accepting uncertainty, the overthinking mind tries to eliminate it by collecting more information, considering more possibilities, and delaying decisions until everything feels perfectly clear. Unfortunately, that moment never arrives. There is always one more article to read, one more opinion to hear, one more scenario to imagine, one more reason to wait. The search for certainty becomes endless because certainty itself is impossible. This is where overthinking quietly steals your life. It doesn't always stop you completely, it simply delays you. You postpone applying for the job because your resume could be better. You delay starting the business because your plan isn't perfect. You avoid telling someone how you feel because you're trying to predict every possible response. You keep researching instead of creating, planning instead of acting, thinking instead of living. Days become weeks, weeks become months. Sometimes years pass while the mind continues preparing for a future that never arrives. One of the most common forms of overthinking is called analysis paralysis. Imagine standing at a crossroads with 5 different paths. Instead of choosing one, you spend hours trying to calculate which path is absolutely perfect. You compare every possibility, imagine every mistake, and fear making the wrong choice. Eventually, you remain standing exactly where you began. Ironically, refusing to choose is still a choice. While you are waiting for certainty, life continues moving forward without you. Another hidden form of overthinking is rumination. Unlike planning for the future, rumination traps you in the past. You replay old conversations. You relive embarrassing moments. You wonder what you should have said differently. You imagine alternative endings to situations that can never be changed. The mind believes it is solving a problem. In reality, it is reopening the same emotional wound again and again. Think about how often people revisit a single mistake from years ago. A failed interview, a broken relationship, a missed opportunity, a careless comment. The event lasted only a few minutes. The memory lasts for years. The past cannot be changed, yet the overthinking mind continues negotiating with it, as though a different ending might somehow appear. This constant mental activity comes at a cost. Overthinking drains emotional energy. It steals sleep. It increases anxiety. It weakens concentration. It makes simple decisions feel overwhelming and important decisions feel impossible. The brain was designed to solve problems, not to carry unfinished thoughts endlessly. The more mental tabs you keep open, the slower your mind begins to operate. Many people believe overthinking protects them from mistakes. The opposite is often true. Exhausted minds make poorer decisions. When every option has been examined 100 times, confidence disappears. Every choice begins to look equally risky. This is why intelligent people often struggle with overthinking. Their ability to imagine possibilities becomes both a gift and a burden. They don't just see one possible outcome, they see 20. Some are realistic, many are not. Yet the brain treats each imagined scenario as though it deserves equal attention. Fear quietly fuels this process. Every what if creates another branch of possibilities. What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if I regret this? What if something goes wrong? Notice something important. The overthinking mind almost always asks negative questions. Rarely does it ask, what if this changes my life? What if I succeed? What if everything works out better than I imagined? The brain naturally gives greater attention to danger than opportunity because survival has always been its highest priority. But survival alone is not enough to build a meaningful life. Growth requires movement. Movement requires decisions, and decisions always involve uncertainty. Consider someone searching for the perfect career. They spend months comparing industries, reading reviews, watching videos, and asking for advice from everyone they know. Every new piece of information creates another question. Instead of becoming clearer, the decision becomes more confusing. Meanwhile, another person chooses a reasonable path, gains experience, learns from mistakes, and adjusts along the way. The second person appears more confident. In reality, they simply stopped demanding certainty before taking action. Life often rewards movement more than perfection. The solution to overthinking is not to stop thinking altogether. It is to think with purpose. Ask yourself a powerful question. Am I solving a problem, or am I repeating it? If the same thought has visited your mind 10 times today without producing a new insight, chances are you are no longer solving anything. You are simply looping. Another helpful practice is to separate what you can control from what you cannot. You can prepare. You cannot predict every outcome. You can make thoughtful decisions. You cannot guarantee perfect results. You can learn from mistakes. You cannot avoid making them altogether. Accepting uncertainty is not weakness, it is wisdom. Finally, remember that action often creates the clarity that thinking never will. Many answers reveal themselves only after you begin. The first draft teaches you how to write the second. The first conversation shows you what needs to be said next. The first step reveals the next one. Waiting until everything feels clear usually means waiting forever. Overthinking promises safety but delivers delay. It promises certainty but creates confusion. It promises better decisions but often prevents any decision at all. Your mind is a remarkable problem solver. Do not allow it to become a problem creator. Some of the greatest opportunities in life belong not to those who think the longest, but to those who think carefully, act courageously, and trust themselves enough to learn along the way. Because clarity is rarely found before action. More often, it is discovered because of it. Chapter 6. Tomorrow Never Comes. The Psychology of Procrastination. Have you ever promised yourself that tomorrow would be different? Tomorrow you'll wake up early. Tomorrow you'll start exercising. Tomorrow you'll begin writing that book, launch that business, study for the exam, make the phone call, or finally take the first step toward the life you've imagined. But tomorrow arrives, quietly becomes today, and somehow the same promise is pushed forward once again. This cycle repeats so often that many people begin believing they are lazy. In reality, most procrastination has very little to do with laziness. It has everything to do with how the mind tries to protect itself from discomfort. When people think of procrastination, they usually imagine someone wasting time by scrolling through social media, watching television, or endlessly organizing their desk instead of working. Those behaviors are visible, but they are only symptoms. Beneath them lies something much deeper. Procrastination is emotional avoidance. The task itself is rarely the real problem. Instead, the brain wants to escape the uncomfortable emotions connected to the task. Fear of failure, fear of success, perfectionism, uncertainty, boredom, frustration, or self-doubt create emotional tension. Rather than facing those feelings, the mind searches for immediate relief. That relief often comes in the form of distraction. For a few moments, watching another video or checking another notification feels better than confronting a difficult challenge. The problem is that temporary relief comes with a hidden cost. The task never disappears. Instead, it grows larger inside your imagination. As deadlines approach, anxiety increases. The longer you wait, the heavier the task feels. Ironically, the very behavior meant to reduce stress ends up creating even more of it. This is the procrastination loop. Avoidance creates relief. Relief reinforces avoidance. Avoidance creates guilt. Guilt creates more stress. And stress makes avoidance even more attractive. Without realizing it, the brain becomes trapped in a cycle that feeds itself. Another reason procrastination is so powerful is something psychologists call present bias. Your brain naturally gives greater importance to immediate rewards than future benefits. The pleasure of relaxing for 10 minutes feels more valuable than the long-term reward of completing an important project. The future version of yourself seems distant, while the comfort of the present moment feels real. This is why saving money, exercising, studying, or building healthy habits can feel difficult. The rewards arrive later, the effort is required now. Your mind prefers immediate comfort over delayed success. Understanding this tendency allows you to stop blaming yourself. Your brain is not broken. It is simply following an ancient survival strategy that prioritized immediate needs over distant goals. The challenge in modern life is learning to guide that instinct rather than obey it. Perfectionism also disguises itself as procrastination. Many people delay starting because they want everything to be perfect. They wait for the perfect idea, the perfect timing, the perfect mood, or the perfect plan. But perfection is a moving target. The more you chase it, the longer you delay beginning. Imagine an artist staring at a blank canvas, refusing to paint because the first stroke might not be beautiful. The painting can never become a masterpiece because it never begins. Progress always starts imperfectly. Every successful author once wrote an awkward first draft. Every accomplished athlete once performed poorly. Every expert was once inexperienced. Action creates improvement. Waiting creates stagnation. One of the simplest ways to defeat procrastination is to make the task smaller. The brain often resists large, overwhelming goals. Write a book feels intimidating. Write one paragraph feels manageable. Get healthy feels enormous. Take a 10-minute walk feels possible. Small actions bypass resistance. Once you begin, something remarkable happens. Momentum starts building. What felt impossible becomes easier simply because you have started. Motivation often follows action, not the other way around. Many people spend years waiting to feel motivated before beginning. In reality, beginning is what creates motivation. Think about the last time you postponed cleaning your room or starting an important assignment. Before you began, it felt exhausting. But after just a few minutes of working, the task became less intimidating than your imagination had suggested. The hardest part is rarely the work itself. The hardest part is crossing the invisible line between thinking and doing. Your identity also plays an important role. If you repeatedly tell yourself, "I'm a procrastinator," your brain begins treating procrastination as part of who you are instead of something you occasionally do. Identity shapes behavior. Instead of saying, "I'm a procrastinator," try saying, "I'm learning to take action even when I don't feel like it." That subtle shift creates room for growth. You are no longer trapped inside a label. You are becoming someone different. It is also important to recognize that consistency matters far more than intensity. Many people wait for a burst of inspiration, work hard for one day, then disappear for the next 2 weeks. Real transformation rarely happens that way. Small, consistent progress always defeats occasional perfection. One page every day becomes a book. One workout at a time builds strength. One conversation at a time repairs relationships. One decision at a time changes a life. Your future is built through repeated actions, not isolated moments of motivation. Whenever you catch yourself saying, "I'll do it tomorrow," pause and ask a different question. What tiny action can I take right now? Not tomorrow, not next week. Right now. Perhaps it's opening the document, sending the email, reading one page, making one phone call, putting on your running shoes. Small actions break the spell of procrastination. Remember that readiness is not a feeling, it is a decision. You will rarely feel completely prepared before doing something meaningful. Courage grows after action, not before it. Tomorrow has stolen more dreams than failure ever has. The life you want is not built on someday. It is built on today. Every time you choose action over avoidance, progress over perfection, and consistency over excuses, you weaken procrastination's grip on your mind. And eventually, the person who always waited for tomorrow becomes the person who simply begins. Chapter 7. Why we become our own worst enemy. There is an old saying that your greatest enemy is not outside you, it is within you. At first, this sounds like a dramatic exaggeration. After all, we tend to blame our problems on difficult people, unfortunate circumstances, bad luck, or limited opportunities. We believe that if only the world treated us differently, life would become easier. Yet, if we look closely, we often discover that the person standing between us and the life we desire is ourselves. This invisible battle is called self-sabotage. Self-sabotage occurs when your actions quietly work against your own goals. You genuinely want success, happiness, confidence, or meaningful relationships, yet your behavior repeatedly moves you in the opposite direction. You delay important work, abandon opportunities, settle for less than you deserve, avoid difficult conversations, or give up just before making progress. The painful part is that these actions rarely feel intentional. Most people don't wake up in the morning thinking, "Today I'm going to ruin my chances." Instead, self-sabotage happens beneath conscious awareness, disguised as caution, comfort, or even common sense. The human mind is designed to seek consistency. Once you develop a particular identity, your brain works hard to protect it, even if that identity is limiting. If you've spent years believing that you're not successful, not attractive, not intelligent enough, or not worthy of recognition, success itself can begin to feel uncomfortable. Achieving something meaningful challenges the story you've been telling yourself for years. Rather than changing the story, the mind often changes the behavior. Imagine an employee who has spent years believing they are average. One day, an opportunity for promotion appears. On paper, they are qualified. Their manager believes in them. Friends encourage them to apply. Yet instead of feeling excited, they begin finding reasons not to try. They convince themselves someone else is more deserving. They delay submitting the application until the deadline passes. Later, they tell themselves they simply weren't interested. But the truth is different. They were protecting an old identity. Accepting the promotion would have required them to become someone different. It would have challenged the belief that they were ordinary. Their mind chose familiarity over possibility. This is one of the strangest characteristics of human psychology. The familiar often feels safer than the better. Even painful situations can become comfortable if they are predictable. A person may remain in an unhealthy relationship because loneliness feels more frightening than unhappiness. Someone may stay in a job they dislike because uncertainty feels more dangerous than dissatisfaction. Others continue unhealthy habits simply because they have become part of daily life. The brain interprets familiarity as safety, even when that familiarity is slowly destroying your potential. Another common form of self-sabotage is the fear of success. Most people talk about the fear of failure, but far fewer recognize that success can also be frightening. Success brings visibility. It creates higher expectations. It demands greater responsibility. It may even change relationships with friends and family. Deep down, some people worry that success will make others jealous, create pressure to perform, or expose them as frauds. To avoid these uncomfortable possibilities, they unconsciously stop themselves before reaching the next level. Consider an aspiring entrepreneur who spends years talking about starting a business. They attend seminars, buy courses, and develop business plans. Everything appears to be moving forward. But every time they are ready to launch, they discover another reason to wait. The website needs improvement. The logo isn't perfect. The timing isn't right. The market feels uncertain. Months become years. Nothing is launched. From the outside, it appears they are being careful. Inside, fear is quietly controlling every decision. If they never launch, they never have to discover whether they will succeed or fail. Self-sabotage often hides behind excuses that sound perfectly reasonable. I'll start when I have more experience. I need to think about it a little longer. This isn't the right time. I'll wait until I'm more confident. Sometimes these statements are true. More often, they are stories the mind creates to protect itself from discomfort. The danger is that repeated excuses eventually become beliefs. You stop seeing them as temporary reasons and begin accepting them as permanent truths. Before long, you no longer question why you're standing still. You simply assume that's who you are. Past experiences also play a powerful role in self-sabotage. If you've experienced criticism, rejection, betrayal, or repeated disappointment, your mind naturally wants to prevent those painful emotions from happening again. It creates invisible rules to keep you safe. Don't trust people too easily. Don't dream too big. Don't take unnecessary risks. Don't expect too much. Although these rules may reduce emotional pain, they also reduce opportunity. Every protective wall you build keeps danger out, but it also keeps possibility out. Another reason people become their own worst enemy is the constant search for external validation. Many individuals base their decisions on how others might react instead of what truly matters to them. They choose careers to impress people, remain silent to avoid criticism, and ignore personal dreams because they fear being judged. Over time, they stop living according to their own values and begin living according to imagined expectations. The problem is that external approval is impossible to control. No matter what you achieve, someone will criticize you. Someone will misunderstand you. Someone will disagree with your choices. If your confidence depends entirely on other people's opinions, your emotional life will always remain unstable. Breaking free from self-sabotage begins with awareness. Instead of asking, "Why do I keep failing?" ask a more powerful question. How might I be getting in my own way? This question shifts your attention from blaming circumstances to understanding patterns. You begin noticing how often fear disguises itself as logic, how perfection delays action, and how old beliefs quietly shape present decisions. The next step is learning to separate your identity from your mistakes. Failing at something does not make you a failure. Making a poor decision does not make you incapable. Being rejected does not mean you are unworthy. Mistakes are events. Identity is a choice. The more you confuse the two, the more power self-sabotage gains over your life. It is also important to replace the habit of seeking certainty with the habit of taking small, consistent action. You don't overcome self-sabotage through one dramatic breakthrough. You overcome it every time you choose courage instead of comfort. Every difficult conversation you have, every opportunity you pursue, every promise you keep to yourself weakens the old patterns and strengthens a healthier identity. Remember, your mind will always try to keep you inside the world it already understands. Growth requires stepping beyond that familiar world. It requires accepting that discomfort is not a warning to stop. It is often a sign that you are expanding beyond your previous limits. The greatest victories are rarely won against competitors, critics, or circumstances. They are won against the invisible habits, fears, and beliefs that quietly convince you to stay small. The moment you recognize that your greatest obstacle is not the world, but the patterns within your own mind, you gain something far more valuable than confidence. You gain responsibility, and responsibility is powerful because it reminds you that if your mind can create the obstacle, your mind can also remove it. The day you stop becoming your own worst enemy is the day you become your own greatest ally. From that moment forward, every step you take moves you closer, not just to success, but to the person you are always capable of becoming. Chapter 8. When feelings become facts. Imagine waking up one morning feeling like a failure. Nothing terrible has happened. You still have your job. Your family still loves you. Your abilities haven't disappeared overnight. Yet because you feel like a failure, everything around you suddenly seems to confirm that belief. A small mistake at work feels like proof that you're incompetent. A delayed text message feels like evidence that someone is upset with you. A minor setback feels like the beginning of a disaster. The facts haven't changed. Only your feelings have. Yet your mind treats those feelings as if they are objective reality. This invisible mental trap is known as emotional reasoning. It happens whenever we assume that because we feel something, it must be true. We stop asking what the evidence says and begin trusting whatever emotion happens to be strongest in the moment. I feel anxious, so something bad must be about to happen. I feel guilty, so I must have done something wrong. I feel inadequate, so I probably am. I feel hopeless, so nothing will ever improve. These thoughts appear logical because emotions are incredibly convincing. Unlike ordinary thoughts, emotions are experienced physically. Anxiety tightens your chest. Fear accelerates your heartbeat. Sadness drains your energy. Anger fills your body with tension. Because emotions are so powerful, they create the illusion that they must be accurate. But emotions are not facts. They are signals. Sometimes those signals point toward reality. Other times they are influenced by past experiences, hidden fears, limiting beliefs, stress, exhaustion, or even a lack of sleep. Imagine looking through a pair of blue-tinted glasses. Every object around you appears slightly blue. The world hasn't changed, only the lens through which you're viewing it. Emotional reasoning works in exactly the same way. Your emotions become the lens through which you interpret reality. If the lens is distorted, your conclusions become distorted as well. This is why two people can experience the same situation and reach completely different conclusions. Suppose two employees receive brief feedback from their manager. One person thinks, "This will help me improve." The other immediately concludes, "I'm doing a terrible job." The event is identical. The emotional interpretation is different. The difference isn't found in reality. It's found in the story each person's mind creates. Past experiences often shape these emotional stories. Someone who experienced frequent criticism as a child may become highly sensitive to feedback as an adult. Even constructive advice can trigger feelings of rejection because the brain connects today's situation with yesterday's emotional memories. The mind doesn't always distinguish between the past and the present. Instead, it asks a simple question. What does this situation remind me of? If an experience resembles an old emotional wound, your brain may react as though the original event is happening again. This explains why some fears seem far larger than the situation itself. A simple disagreement feels like abandonment. A small mistake feels like complete failure. A delayed response feels like rejection. The emotion belongs partly to the present, but partly to the past. Another reason emotional reasoning is so powerful is that the brain constantly searches for evidence that supports its current emotional state. When you're anxious, your attention naturally focuses on possible threats. When you're angry, you notice reasons to stay angry. When you're sad, your mind recalls painful memories more easily than joyful ones. Your emotional state becomes a filter, selecting information that matches how you already feel. This creates a dangerous cycle. The feeling influences your thoughts. Your thoughts strengthen the feeling. The stronger the feeling becomes, the more convincing the thoughts appear. Eventually, you stop questioning them altogether. Consider someone preparing for an important presentation. Before walking into the room, they feel nervous. Instead of recognizing that nervousness is a normal response to a meaningful challenge, they interpret it differently. I'm nervous because I'm not prepared. I'm nervous because I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm nervous because everyone will see that I don't belong here. The emotion becomes evidence. As anxiety increases, concentration decreases. They begin speaking too quickly, forgetting key points and avoiding eye contact. Afterwards, they conclude that their fear was justified. But the emotion didn't predict reality. It influenced their behavior, which then shaped the outcome. This is one reason emotional reasoning quietly limits people's potential. They stop pursuing opportunities, not because they lack ability, but because they mistake temporary emotions for permanent truths. A person feels uncertain, so they avoid applying for the promotion. They feel afraid, so they never start the business. They feel unworthy, so they settle for relationships that don't truly fulfill them. They feel incapable, so they never discover what they could have achieved. In every case, the emotion becomes the decision maker. One of the most valuable mental habits you can develop is learning to separate what you feel from what you know. Suppose you think, I feel like everyone is judging me. Pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what evidence do I actually have? Often, you'll discover that your conclusion is based almost entirely on emotion rather than observation. This doesn't mean your feelings are wrong. They deserve attention. They deserve compassion. But they should not automatically become your evidence. Think of emotions as visitors rather than permanent residents. They arrive, stay for a while, and eventually leave. Happiness comes and goes. Anxiety comes and goes. Anger comes and goes. Sadness comes and goes. The mistake is believing that today's emotional weather defines tomorrow's reality. Just as you wouldn't assume that one rainy afternoon means the sun will never return, you shouldn't assume that one difficult emotion defines your future. Another powerful practice is naming your emotions instead of becoming them. Instead of saying, "I am anxious," try saying, "I am experiencing anxiety." Instead of saying, "I am a failure," say, "I'm feeling disappointed." This small change in language creates psychological distance. It reminds you that emotions are experiences you have, not identities you become. Mindfulness teaches a similar lesson. Rather than fighting emotions or pretending they don't exist, mindfulness encourages you to observe them with curiosity. You notice the anxiety. You notice the fear. You notice the sadness. But you don't immediately obey them. You recognize that every emotion carries information, yet not every emotion tells the complete truth. The strongest minds are not those that never experience fear, doubt, or sadness. They are the minds that understand emotions without surrendering to them. They recognize that feelings are valuable guides but unreliable judges. Facts deserve evidence. Decisions deserve wisdom. And your future deserves more than whatever emotion happens to be passing through your mind today. The next time an emotion whispers that you're not good enough, that success is impossible, or that failure is inevitable, pause before believing it. Ask yourself a simple question. Is this reality speaking, or just my feelings? That single question has the power to break one of the mind's most invisible traps, because feelings are real, but they are not always right. Chapter 9. Smarter Choices. Escaping the Decision Traps. Every single day, your life is shaped by decisions. Some are small and almost invisible. You decide when to wake up, what to eat, which route to take to work, and whether to exercise or stay on the couch. Others are life-changing. You choose your career, your relationships, your habits, your investments, and the opportunities you pursue. Most people believe these decisions are guided by logic. The truth is more surprising. While we like to think of ourselves as rational thinkers, much of our decision-making is influenced by invisible mental shortcuts called cognitive biases. These shortcuts help the brain make quick judgments, but they also create predictable mistakes. Without realizing it, we often choose what feels familiar instead of what is best, defend poor decisions because of our ego, and ignore evidence that contradicts what we already believe. The result is that we don't simply make bad decisions. We repeatedly make the same bad decisions. One of the most common decision traps is the confirmation bias. Once your mind forms an opinion, it naturally searches for information that supports it while ignoring information that challenges it. Imagine someone believes they will never become successful. Every setback becomes proof that they're right. Every failure strengthens the belief. But when they achieve something meaningful, they dismiss it as luck. Their brain selectively collects evidence that confirms the existing story. The same pattern appears in relationships, politics, business, and everyday life. We follow people who agree with us, read articles that support our opinions, and avoid conversations that might challenge our thinking. The mind loves certainty more than truth. Another powerful trap is the sunk cost fallacy. Imagine you've invested years into a project that clearly isn't working. You've spent countless hours, energy, and money trying to make it succeed. Deep down, you know it's time to walk away. Yet instead of leaving, you continue investing even more. Why? Because your mind whispers, "I've already come this far." The same thing happens in unhealthy relationships, failing businesses, losing investments, and careers that no longer bring purpose. People continue because they don't want their previous effort to feel wasted. But here's an important truth. The time you've already spent cannot be recovered. The only question that matters is whether continuing today is the best decision for your future. Smart decision makers don't ask, "How much have I already invested?" They ask, "Knowing what I know today, would I choose this again?" If the answer is no, the wisest choice may be to let go. Another invisible trap is the status quo bias. The human brain naturally prefers things to remain the same. Familiarity feels safe, while change feels uncertain. Even when our current situation makes us unhappy, we often choose to stay because uncertainty appears more frightening than dissatisfaction. This explains why people remain in jobs they dislike, postpone moving to a better city, avoid learning new skills, or tolerate unhealthy relationships for years. Doing nothing feels safer than making a difficult choice. But in reality, refusing to decide is still a decision. Choosing not to change means choosing your current future. Regret often grows, not from the risks we took, but from the opportunities we never pursued. Another decision trap appears when emotions take control. Think about the last time you made an important decision while angry, or while anxious, or while deeply excited. Strong emotions narrow your perspective. They make short-term feelings appear more important than long-term consequences. Someone who feels angry may send a message they later regret. Someone who feels lonely may enter the wrong relationship. Someone overwhelmed by excitement may spend money impulsively or make unrealistic promises. The emotion eventually fades. The consequences often remain. Wise people understand that emotions deserve attention, but not immediate authority. They learn to pause. Sometimes the smartest decision is simply waiting until intense emotions settle before acting. Another mental shortcut is the availability bias. Your brain judges the likelihood of events based on how easily examples come to mind. Suppose you hear about a plane crash on the news. For days, flying suddenly feels dangerous. Yet, statistically, driving to the airport remains far more risky. The dramatic story occupies your attention, making it seem more common than it actually is. The same happens in everyday life. One failed investment convinces someone that investing is always dangerous. One dishonest person creates the belief that nobody can be trusted. One embarrassing experience makes public speaking feel impossible forever. Our minds often mistake memorable experiences for typical ones. This leads to decisions based on emotion rather than reality. One of the most overlooked decision traps is decision fatigue. Every choice you make throughout the day consumes mental energy. What should I wear? Which email should I answer first? What should I eat? Should I accept this invitation? Should I buy this product? By the evening, your mind is often exhausted. This is why people make poorer choices when they are mentally drained. They become more impulsive, avoid difficult tasks, and choose immediate comfort over long-term benefit. Highly productive people understand this principle. They simplify unnecessary decisions. They create routines. They plan ahead. They automate small choices so their mental energy remains available for decisions that truly matter. Perhaps the greatest difference between reactive people and wise decision makers is that wise people ask better questions. Instead of asking, "What feels easiest?" they ask, "What serves my future?" Instead of asking, "What will make me comfortable today?" they ask, "What will I be grateful for a year from now?" The quality of your life depends greatly on the quality of the questions you ask yourself. Good decisions also require accepting an uncomfortable truth. There is no such thing as a perfect decision. Every choice involves uncertainty. Every opportunity carries risk. Every path requires sacrifice. People often waste enormous amounts of time searching for certainty that does not exist. The goal is not to eliminate risk. The goal is to make thoughtful decisions with the best information available and then adapt as new information appears. Successful people rarely know the future with greater certainty than anyone else. They simply become better at learning, adjusting, and correcting course when necessary. Another valuable habit is creating space between impulse and action. When faced with an important decision, resist the urge to respond immediately. Pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, am I choosing based on fear, habit, ego, or evidence? Will this decision still make sense next week? What advice would I give someone I care about if they were in my position? These questions interrupt automatic thinking and activate deeper reasoning. Sometimes the difference between a life-changing mistake and a life-changing success is nothing more than a thoughtful pause. Finally, remember that every decision becomes part of your identity. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, honesty over convenience, learning over pride, or courage over fear, you strengthen the kind of person you are becoming. Small decisions repeated consistently shape extraordinary lives. Large decisions simply reveal the habits built by the smaller ones. Your future is not determined by a single dramatic choice. It is built one decision at a time. The invisible mind traps discussed throughout this book will always try to influence those decisions. They will encourage comfort over growth, certainty over possibility, and familiar patterns over meaningful change. But the moment you recognize those traps, you gain something incredibly powerful. You gain the freedom to choose differently. And that freedom, exercised one wise decision at a time, has the power to completely transform your life. Chapter 10. Rebuilding Confidence from the Inside Out. Confidence is one of the most misunderstood qualities in the human experience. Many people believe it is something you are born with. They assume that confident people simply possess a special personality, while everyone else must spend life struggling with self-doubt. They look at successful leaders, talented performers, and inspiring speakers and imagine they have always been fearless. But confidence is rarely the beginning of the story. More often, it is the result. Behind every confident person is a long history of uncertainty, mistakes, rejection, embarrassment, and persistence. What separates them from others is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to continue despite it. The greatest mistake people make is waiting to feel confident before taking action. They tell themselves, I'll speak up when I'm more confident. I'll apply for the promotion when I believe in myself. I'll start the business once I'm sure I can succeed. I'll pursue my dream after my confidence improves. Unfortunately, confidence doesn't work that way. Confidence is not a requirement for action. It is a reward for action. Think about a child learning to ride a bicycle. On the first day, the child is nervous. They wobble, lose balance, and probably fall several times. If they waited until they felt completely confident, they would never climb onto the bicycle at all. Confidence develops only because they continue trying. Every small improvement becomes evidence that they are capable of learning. The same principle applies throughout life. You become confident by doing difficult things, not by thinking about doing them. One reason so many people struggle with confidence is that they build it on the opinions of others instead of their own experiences. A compliment makes them feel valuable. Criticism makes them feel worthless. Praise gives them energy. Rejection destroys their motivation. This creates fragile confidence because it depends entirely on external approval. The problem with seeking confidence from other people is that their opinions constantly change. Some people will admire you, others will misunderstand you. Some will encourage your dreams, while others will question them. If your self-worth rises and falls with every opinion you hear, your confidence will never become stable. True confidence grows from something much deeper. It grows from keeping promises to yourself. Every time you say you will do something and actually do it, your mind begins collecting evidence that you are trustworthy. If you promise yourself that you'll wake up early and follow through, your confidence grows. If you commit to reading every day, exercising consistently, or completing an important project, each fulfilled promise strengthens your relationship with yourself. Confidence is built through integrity, not integrity toward other people, integrity toward yourself. Unfortunately, many people unknowingly damage their own confidence every single day. They make promises in moments of inspiration and abandon them when motivation fades. They repeatedly tell themselves they will change tomorrow, start next Monday, or begin next month. After enough broken promises, the mind quietly stops believing them. Imagine having a friend who constantly promised to meet you but never arrived. Eventually, you would stop trusting that person. The same thing happens internally. Every broken promise weakens self-trust, and without self-trust, genuine confidence becomes almost impossible. Another invisible enemy of confidence is comparison. Modern life makes comparison easier than ever before. Every day we see carefully edited photographs, impressive achievements, luxury lifestyles, and seemingly perfect lives displayed on our screens. We compare our ordinary moments with someone else's highlight reel and conclude that we are falling behind. But comparison is built on incomplete information. You rarely see someone's failures. You rarely see their doubts. You rarely witness the years of hard work that came before the success you admire. You see the destination, but not the journey. Every person is fighting battles you cannot see. When you compare your beginning with someone else's middle, you create unnecessary discouragement. Real confidence grows when you compete with your previous self instead of everyone else. Ask yourself a better question. Am I becoming a little better than I was yesterday? That single question shifts your attention from competition to growth. Another obstacle to confidence is perfectionism. Many people believe confidence comes from never making mistakes. In reality, confident people simply develop a healthier relationship with mistakes. They understand that failure is information, not identity. Imagine two people giving their first public presentation. The first person makes a mistake and thinks, "I'm terrible at this, I'll never speak again." The second person makes the same mistake and thinks, "Now I know what to improve before next time." The event is identical. The interpretation is different. One person protects their ego. The other develops their ability. Confidence grows whenever learning becomes more important than looking perfect. This is why courage always comes before confidence. Every confident conversation began with someone speaking while their voice was shaking. Every successful business began with someone uncertain about the future. Every expert was once a beginner who knew almost nothing. Every achievement you admire was built one uncomfortable step at a time. Another powerful way to rebuild confidence is by changing the questions you ask yourself. Many people constantly ask, "What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if I'm not good enough?" Your brain naturally searches for answers. Imagine asking different questions. What if I surprise myself? What if I learn something valuable? What if this opportunity changes my life? What if I'm stronger than I think? The brain responds to these questions as well. The questions you repeatedly ask shape the reality you eventually notice. Confidence also requires accepting that fear will never disappear completely. Many people assume that fearless people exist. They don't. Even experienced athletes feel nervous before important competitions. Successful entrepreneurs still worry before major decisions. Great musicians still experience stage fright. The difference is that they no longer interpret fear as a command to stop. Instead, they recognize fear as evidence that something meaningful is happening. Fear says, "This matters." Confidence replies, "Then I'll do it anyway." One of the simplest habits that strengthens confidence is celebrating small victories. The mind naturally focuses on what remains unfinished while ignoring what has already been accomplished. You complete 10 tasks but criticize yourself for the one you missed. You improve significantly but notice only how far you still have to go. Growth becomes invisible because your attention stays fixed on the gap rather than the progress. Take time to recognize every promise you keep, every challenge you overcome, every fear you face, and every lesson you learn. Confidence grows through accumulated evidence. Small victories become larger victories. Small acts of courage become a courageous life. Remember that confidence is not believing you'll always succeed. It is believing that you can handle whatever happens. Whether you succeed or fail, you will learn. Whether people approve or criticize, you will continue growing. Whether life goes according to plan or not, you will adapt. That is real confidence. It is quiet rather than loud. It is steady rather than dramatic. It does not depend on perfection, applause, or certainty. It grows from repeated action, honest effort, and unwavering self-trust. The strongest confidence is never given to you by the world. It is built from the inside out, one promise kept, one fear faced, and one courageous decision at a time. And once that foundation is built, no setback, criticism, or temporary failure can easily take it away. Chapter 11. The Freedom of Awareness. Escaping the invisible mind traps. Imagine spending your entire life inside a room without realizing you were trapped. The walls are invisible. The door has never been locked, yet because you've lived there for so long, you assume the room is the entire world. You stop looking for exits because you no longer believe another way of living exists. This is how invisible mind traps work. They don't announce themselves. They don't appear as obvious obstacles. Instead, they quietly become part of your identity. They shape your thoughts, influence your emotions, direct your decisions, and determine your actions without asking for your permission. The most dangerous traps are not the ones you can see. They are the ones you mistake for reality. Throughout this book, you have explored many of these hidden patterns. You discovered how your subconscious mind quietly runs much of your behavior, how cognitive biases distort your thinking, how limiting beliefs become invisible prisons, and how fear often disguises itself as logic. You saw how overthinking creates the illusion of progress while keeping you motionless, how procrastination is usually an attempt to escape uncomfortable emotions, and how self-sabotage protects familiar identities instead of helping you grow. You also learned that emotions are not always reliable guides. Feeling afraid does not automatically mean danger exists. Feeling incapable does not mean you lack ability. Feeling uncertain does not mean failure is inevitable. Your emotions are real, but they are not always accurate reflections of reality. You explored how hidden biases influence everyday decisions, often without your awareness. You saw that confidence is not something you discover before taking action, but something you build by repeatedly keeping promises to yourself. Every chapter has revealed another invisible thread woven into the fabric of the human mind. The question now is simple. What do you do with this knowledge? Awareness alone is powerful, but awareness without action changes very little. Imagine standing in front of a map that clearly shows the way out of a forest. Simply owning the map does not bring you home. You still have to take the first step, then the second, and then the next. Knowledge becomes transformation only when it changes behavior. The same is true for your mind. You do not become mentally free because you understand these ideas. You become mentally free because you practice them every day. The first practice is observation. Most people immediately believe every thought that enters their minds. They never pause to question it. If the mind says, "You're not good enough," they accept it as truth. If it whispers, "Don't even try," they obey. If it predicts failure, they stop moving forward before life has a chance to prove them wrong. Freedom begins the moment you become an observer instead of a prisoner. Rather than saying, "This thought is true," ask yourself, "Is this simply another thought passing through my mind?" That single shift creates distance between you and your thinking. You begin realizing that you have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. You experience emotions, but you are not your emotions. You have beliefs, but beliefs can change. The second practice is curiosity. Whenever you notice yourself reacting strongly to a situation, pause before responding. Ask questions. Why did this upset me so much? What story am I telling myself? Is my reaction coming from today's reality or yesterday's experiences? Curiosity weakens automatic reactions because it replaces judgment with understanding. The third practice is intentional action. Your brain will always encourage familiar behavior. It prefers certainty over possibility, comfort over growth, and short-term relief over long-term fulfillment. If you always obey those impulses, your future will simply repeat your past. Growth requires making choices that feel unfamiliar. Speak even when your voice shakes. Apply even when you doubt yourself. Begin before you feel ready. Apologize when your pride resists. Rest when guilt tells you to keep working. Walk away from situations that no longer support your well-being. Every intentional action rewires the brain. Every courageous decision weakens an old mental pattern and strengthens a healthier one. Remember that change rarely happens dramatically. Most transformations are almost invisible while they are happening. A person who reads 10 pages every day doesn't notice much difference after 1 week. Someone who exercises consistently doesn't transform overnight. A person practicing healthier thinking doesn't suddenly wake up fearless. But months later, everything looks different. The small actions have quietly become a different life. Your mind works exactly the same way. Every thought you question instead of believing. Every fear you face instead of avoiding. Every promise you keep instead of breaking. Every difficult conversation you choose instead of escaping. Each one seems insignificant on its own. Together they reshape your identity. One of the greatest misconceptions about personal growth is believing there will come a day when all fear disappears, every negative thought vanishes, and every decision becomes easy. That day never comes. The human mind will always generate uncertainty. It will always produce doubts. It will always search for potential danger. These functions helped our ancestors survive. Your goal is not to eliminate these mental habits completely. Your goal is to stop allowing them to control your life. Courage is not the absence of fear. Discipline is not the absence of temptation. Confidence is not the absence of doubt. Wisdom is learning which voice deserves your attention. Every day, your mind offers countless suggestions. Some move you toward growth, others pull you back toward comfort. You cannot always control which thoughts appear. You can always choose which ones you follow. Perhaps the most important lesson in this book is that your mind is incredibly powerful, but it is not your master unless you allow it to be. The same mind that creates limiting beliefs can create empowering ones. The same imagination that predicts failure can visualize possibility. The same brain that once built unhealthy habits can build healthier ones. Neuroplasticity reminds us that the brain is constantly changing in response to repeated experience. Every choice you make today becomes part of tomorrow's mental wiring. This means your past does not have the final word. Your childhood does not have the final word. Your mistakes do not have the final word. Your fears do not have the final word. Every new decision becomes an opportunity to write a different future. As you leave this book, remember that you are not searching for a perfect mind. Perfection is another invisible trap. You are building an aware mind. An aware mind notices fear without surrendering to it. An aware mind questions assumptions instead of blindly accepting them. An aware mind chooses growth over comfort, truth over illusion, and purpose over habit. The invisible mind traps will continue appearing throughout your life. They will whisper familiar stories. They will invite you back into old patterns. But now you recognize their voices. And once you recognize them, they lose much of their power. The greatest freedom is not living without challenges. It is living without being unconsciously controlled by them. Because the strongest person is not someone with a perfect mind. The strongest person is someone who has learned to understand it, challenge it, and guide it with intention. That journey begins and continues with one simple act of awareness at a time. Chapter 12. A new mind, a new life. Every meaningful journey eventually arrives at a simple truth. The destination was never a place. It was a new way of seeing. When you first opened this book, you may have believed that your greatest obstacles were outside of you. Perhaps you blamed difficult circumstances, lack of opportunity, other people's opinions, or bad luck. Those challenges may have been real, but as you've traveled through these chapters, another reality has emerged. The most powerful forces shaping your life have always existed inside your own mind. Not because your mind is your enemy, but because it has been following patterns you never consciously chose. From childhood experiences to hidden beliefs, from emotional reasoning to procrastination, from overthinking to self-sabotage, these invisible patterns quietly directed your decisions. They influenced how you saw yourself, how you responded to challenges, and what you believed was possible. The encouraging news is that anything learned can also be unlearned. The brain is not a machine permanently locked into old programming. It is constantly adapting, changing, and rebuilding itself through experience. Every new thought you practice, every healthier habit you repeat, and every courageous action you take strengthens new neural pathways. Change is not only possible, it is part of how the human brain is designed to work. This means your future does not have to resemble your past. Perhaps you spent years believing you were not confident enough. Perhaps fear convinced you to avoid opportunities. Perhaps perfectionism delayed your dreams. Perhaps self-doubt became so familiar that it felt like part of your personality. None of these patterns define who you are. They simply describe where your mind has been. There is a profound difference between identity and habit. A habit is something you repeatedly do. An identity is who you believe you are. Many people confuse the two. They say, I am an overthinker. I am lazy. I am anxious. I am unlucky. These statements sound harmless, but they quietly transform temporary behaviors into permanent identities. The more often you repeat them, the more your mind searches for evidence to prove them true. Instead, begin speaking to yourself differently. I've struggled with overthinking, but I'm learning to act. I've experienced fear, but I can still be courageous. I've made mistakes, but I'm still growing. These small changes in language reshape the way you see yourself. They remind you that growth is always possible because identity is never fixed. As you move forward, remember that awareness must become a daily practice rather than a single moment of inspiration. Every morning presents a new opportunity to observe your thoughts instead of automatically believing them. Every challenge gives you another chance to choose courage over comfort. Every difficult decision allows you to strengthen the person you are becoming. You will still experience fear. You will still have moments of doubt. You will still make mistakes. None of these mean you are moving backward. Growth is rarely a straight line. Some days you will feel strong. Other days you will question yourself. The important thing is not how quickly you move. The important thing is that you continue moving. Be patient with yourself during this process. A tree does not become tall in a single season. A river does not carve through stone in one afternoon. Lasting change happens through steady repetition. Small improvements practiced consistently create extraordinary transformations over time. Never underestimate the power of one better decision, one healthier thought, one honest conversation, one promise kept, one courageous step. These moments may appear insignificant, but they are the building blocks of an entirely different life. Remember that your mind is a remarkable tool. It can imagine, create, solve problems, and inspire greatness. But like every powerful tool, it requires direction. If you allow fear to guide it, it will create excuses. If you allow doubt to guide it, it will create limitations. If you allow awareness to guide it, it will create freedom. You always have a choice about which voice you strengthen. Life will continue presenting uncertainty. There will always be unexpected setbacks, disappointments, criticism, and moments when things don't go according to plan. No book can remove those realities, but you can change how you respond to them. You can replace automatic reactions with thoughtful responses. You can replace limiting beliefs with empowering ones. You can replace hesitation with action. And each time you do, you become a little stronger than you were yesterday. The goal of this book was never to help you build a perfect mind. Perfection is an illusion. The goal was to help you build a conscious mind, a mind that notices its own patterns, a mind that questions old assumptions, a mind that refuses to let fear make every important decision. A mind that understands true freedom begins from within. Years from now, you may not remember every story or every concept in these pages. But if you remember one lesson, let it be this. Your thoughts influence your life, but they do not have to control it. You are not trapped by your past. You are not trapped by your fears. You are not trapped by the stories you've repeated for years. The moment you become aware of them, you gain the power to change them. Every sunrise offers a new beginning. Every decision shapes a new direction. Every act of courage creates a new identity. The invisible mind traps lose their power the moment you stop following them unconsciously. From this day forward, choose awareness over assumption. Choose action over hesitation. Choose growth over comfort. Choose truth over fear. Most importantly, choose to become the author of your own mind instead of the prisoner of old patterns. Because a new life never begins when the world around you changes. It begins the moment your way of thinking changes, and once your mind changes, everything else becomes possible. As you reach the end of the invisible mind traps, remember that this is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of a new relationship with your own mind. Throughout this book, you've discovered that many of the greatest obstacles in life are not always visible. They are the hidden beliefs, automatic thoughts, emotional habits, and unconscious patterns that quietly shape your decisions every day. The good news is that once you become aware of these invisible traps, they no longer have the same power over you. You don't need to become a different person overnight. Lasting transformation isn't created through one dramatic breakthrough. It is built through small, consistent choices made every single day. Every time you question a limiting belief, face a fear instead of avoiding it, take action despite uncertainty, or replace an old habit with a healthier one, you are reshaping your mind and ultimately your future. There will still be moments of doubt. There will still be setbacks and difficult days. But now you know something you may not have known before. Your thoughts are powerful, but they are not your master. You always have the ability to pause, reflect, and choose a better response. As you close this book, don't simply remember the ideas, practice them. Let awareness become a daily habit. Let curiosity replace judgment. Let courage become stronger than comfort, and let each new day be another opportunity to become the person you are capable of being. Your mind has always been creating your reality. Now it is time to create it consciously. Thank you for spending this journey with us. May your future be guided not by invisible mind traps, but by clarity, wisdom, and the courage to think differently.